This number ties it all together. It's the beginning and the ending. This fits exactly what's found in Revelation 1. The author of the whole scene that has 2 acts is coming back. Getting back to the Great Seal of America again, you'll notice the configuration here of these stars. They're all pentagrams, but they're arranged in a hexagram, like the Star of David. And then, of course, there's a phoenix. There's a little knob in the back of his head, very subtle, but we can see it. And this is the back of the seal. Or maybe it's the front, but they're opposites. And you'll also notice that there's a little square here, triangle, where the 33s are already drawn in the pictures of the phoenixes in the arcana of the illuminated elite. There's always this little triangle, and there's a 33 there. So if you superimpose both of them, then you get this. Here's the phoenix, symbol of resurrection, superimposed over this. And I had actually shown you how, if you're using the time cycle of the Maya, how this fits into the 2012 time sequence that they have in their calendar. Well, I'll show you an alternative view, because what we're seeing here is this capstone has been represented a lot by Isaiah himself, saying that it's a messianic symbol, or the cornerstone, the chief cornerstone is laid down with shouts of grace to it, unmerited favor. It's a symbol of this idea that God says his creation is somehow saved out of its corruption through his own acts into immortality. What they're talking about here with this symbol is when this time arrives, men will have ascended or transitioned to their highest form possible, all because of God's act. But it's a time sequence here. So the actual event is superimposed over when it will happen. And this is how it works in North America. This is a base. This is the baseline. You don't count this. This is where you launch from. So now you've got 12 courses of masonry, not 13. Unless, of course, you count the capstone, then you do got 13. And so if you add 12 of these and you make the duration 19.47, which is the latitude of Washington, D.C. twice, and it's repeated over and over again in the internal geometry of Washington, D.C., and I didn't get into that, but of course on the Cydonia itself, then you get, over here, 12 times 19.47 gives you 2009. And actually, this is rounded off. It's like 2009.64. It actually puts us pretty close to the 4th of July, which, by the way, divides our year from 365 days right in half to 182.5 days. I guess that's July 3rd that does that. Or if you take 12.12, just continuing on, and multiply it times 19.47, it gives you 2012, if you add that number to 1776. So here is encrypted the end of the calendar, which naturally fits right in with the Mayan calendar. These are the tarot cards. They supposedly have a fairly recent history, maybe the 1500s from Milan. Of course, they're occult as you can get. But the word tarot, here you can actually see it in Hebrew, is a play on the word for rotias, which just means to turn, rotate. It's about the cycle of time, once again. And on top of it, right above the tau, the cross, the end point, the alpha and omega, in Hebrew it's the aleph and the tav. In the ancient Proto-Hebrew, that's what it looked like, the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. It is the Sphinx, the dividing point of the zodiac, with his sword pointing to the phoenix. And then you have the 4 constituent quaternary points of the zodiac. So you have all your time references, your time frame, and now you're seeing this point actually being indicated again. This is called the Earth card. Here you have a Virgo surrounded by the Ouroboros, And then you have Leo and Taurus. It was interesting because there's still two parts of the quaternary reference points on the zodiac. They're part of the cherubim, the two of them. And then these cards, which show up a lot in the card sequence, is Judgment. And why that is especially interesting because the whole card sequence of tarot is supposed to be a miniature version, metaphorically, of man's existence from the beginning to the very end. Whenever you look at Judgment in the medieval drawings, you see this, a sort of feminine version of Michael the archangel with scales. Here's a good person, here's a bad person. And this is at the final judgment. This is just a little part of a very large painting of the end, the final judgment. Here's another image, same idea. These guys have been just newly resurrected, and now they're being judged. But you'll notice it's always wings, very feminine looking. Well, it looks like Virgo, and it looks like Libra together. If you go back to great antiquity, you'll actually find the same symbols again, and this is Hathor. There's a feather of truth there, and weighing the heart and the soul of the deceased right here, who's petitioning for clemency. He's being judged. It's the end. And what's interesting about the idea of the end judge of all in antiquity and leading up to almost the present age where it's actually changed is that was an event that happened to the whole earth. It wasn't to just one person after they died, they'd go through the whole process. It was the whole earth at one point. Everyone was judged. Everyone was given their reward. And you can see that the Egyptians actually rendered Virgo right next to Libra and holding it. And what's significant about that is that in the heaven-earth map that's suggested by Albert Magnus, you have Virgo ending right where we are here in Roswell, and then Libra next to that is suggesting what it's all about, an end point. There's a first coming of the Messiah. There's a second coming of the Messiah. The first one was to save. The second one is to judge. This is an interesting thing because most people don't want to look at this. I mean, this information exists in this arcana. Occult, it's spoken over and over and over again in the symbology. But if it's presented from a Christian viewpoint, then people clap their hands over their ears because it's been maligned so intensely. And the reason it's been maligned so intensely is because those who've actually worked to try to suppress it are very powerful, and they have a really good reason for doing so, because if we're talking about resurrection bodily, then we're also talking about a complete overturn of the hierarchy in heaven, because humans aren't supposed to live forever. Only angelic beings are supposed to live forever, and this is the point where it all is supposed to happen, in 2012. So you got to go all the way back to the first time the alien invasion, if you want to call it that, an angelic invasion occurred, and that was during the time before Noah. Now, the Watchers were the ones that disclosed knowledge to men. And that's covered really extensively by the book of Enoch. And so they were destroyed by this world flood. Now, Jubilees is another pseudepigraphic book that takes off in different parts, in different directions, and is actually attending to the same subject that Enoch works very closely with. And that's the idea of what happened to these beings when they came to the earth. They actually produced human angelic progeny. And these beings totally devastated the civilizations of earth. They actually formed the civilizations, ruled from the civilizations, and then started becoming extremely malignant